The cold, biting wind howled against the windows of St. Mary's Hospital as the automatic doors slid open. It was one of those autumn evenings where the chills seemed to seep through everything, making people pull their jackets tighter and walk a little faster. The fluorescent lights inside the hospital created a harsh contrast to the dreary grayness outside. The waiting room was filled with the usual chaos, patients clutching their sides in pain, worried families whispering together, and the rhythmic beep of heart monitors echoing from distant rooms. The sterile, clinical smell of disinfectant hung thick in the air, making everything feel mechanical and routine. But tonight, something broke through that routine. In the midst of the usual bustle, a young girl stepped hesitantly through the entrance. She couldn't have been older than 13. Her small frame was nearly swallowed by the oversized, faded hoodie that clung damply to her from the drizzling rain outside. Her jeans were frayed at the knees, and her sneakers looked like they had seen better days years ago. But none of that was what caught the attention of the people around her. It was the way she cradled the tiny baby in her arms, its head resting against her chest, bundled up in a thin, mismatched blanket. The girl's eyes darted around the room as she shuffled forward, her steps slow and uncertain, as if every movement weighed 1,000 pounds. Her arms trembled slightly under the weight of the baby, though it was more the emotional weight than the physical one that seemed to burden her. There was something haunting in her expression, her wide eyes hollow, her lips pressed tightly together in a way that only people who've experienced too much pain, too young, could understand. Nurse Olivia, who was at the front desk logging patient charts, caught sight of the girl immediately. At first, she wasn't sure if what she was seeing was real, so out of place was the sight of a child carrying another child into the hospital, with no one else by her side. She blinked and looked again, and the scene only became clearer and more concerning. Olivia's fingers paused over her keyboard as a feeling of unease washed over her. The hustle and bustle of the hospital faded into the background, her attention narrowing in on the girl and the fragile bundle in her arms. The girl stopped just a few feet from the desk, not speaking, just standing there. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her breath coming in shallow, anxious gasps. For a long moment, she didn't look up, her gaze fixed on the tiny baby she held close, as if afraid that speaking would shatter something irreparable. Olivia's heart raced as she moved out from behind the desk, her nurse's instincts kicking in. She crouched down to the girl's level, making sure her voice was gentle but firm. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" she asked, trying not to sound too alarmed, though every fiber of her being screamed that something was terribly wrong. "Whose baby is this? Where are your parents?" The girl's head jerked up at the sound of Olivia's voice, her eyes wide and panicked. For a moment, it seemed like she might not answer. Her lips quivered as if she were trying to form words but couldn't quite manage. Instead, she looked down again at the baby in her arms. She adjusted the blanket, making sure the infant was securely wrapped, before finally looking back at Olivia. The tears came then, silent but steady, glistening in the harsh hospital lights. "My sister," she began, her voice so small it was almost drowned out by the background noise of the hospital. "It's my sister's baby." There was something so raw, so broken in the way she said those words that Olivia felt her breath hitch. She had been a nurse for over a decade, seen her share of tragedies and heartbreak, but there was something about this moment that pierced through her usual professional composure. The room seemed to grow quieter as the tension around them mounted. Even the other patients, who had been absorbed in their own worries, seemed to sense that something heavy was unfolding and glanced toward the girl. "Where is your sister, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, her voice catching slightly as she placed a hand on the girl's arm, hoping to steady her. She had an awful feeling about the answer, but knew she had to ask. The girl sniffed and wiped her nose on the sleeve of her hoodie. Her hands trembled, though she tightened her grip on the baby, holding the infant as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded in reality. She's gone," she whispered, her voice barely audible, like the words themselves were too painful to speak aloud. Olivia's heart sank. She wasn't entirely sure what "gone" meant yet, but she knew enough to feel the chill of dread creeping up her spine. The girl's face, pale and gaunt, told her more than words could. Whatever had happened to her sister, this girl had been through something unimaginable. "What do you mean, gone?" Olivia asked gently, though she feared the answer. She died," the girl said, her voice cracking under the weight of the admission. My sister. She's not coming back. For a moment, the room felt like it stopped breathing. Olivia stared at the girl, the implications of what she had just said hitting her like a freight train. A girl, barely 13, carrying a newborn baby, her sister's baby, and her sister was gone. Tears filled Olivia's eyes, though she blinked them back, knowing she had to stay calm for the girl's sake. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered, pulling the girl gently into a hug. I'm so sorry. The girl didn't resist. In fact, she seemed to collapse into Olivia's arms, her small body shaking with silent sobs as she held the baby tightly to her chest. For several moments they stayed like that, Olivia comforting the girl as best she could, though words felt so inadequate. The girl's story was far from over, but in that moment there was only the sound of her quiet tears, the fragile weight of the baby in her arms, and the cold autumn night pressing in from outside, as if the world itself had conspired to bring them here, to this moment of heartbreak and revelation. Before continuing, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This really helps a lot and allows us to keep bringing you more amazing content. Your support makes all the difference to us. Now let's continue. Lily sat quietly in the small examination room, her legs dangling from the edge of the bed. The weight of the last few days seemed to settle on her shoulders all at once, making her feel even smaller than she was. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, occasionally brushing against the soft fabric of her hoodie, which was too large for her thin frame. The air in the room felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the sorrow she carried had crept into every corner of the space. Dr. Stevens, a man with kind eyes but an exhausted face, glanced at Lily, sensing her inner turmoil. He knew this would be hard, but he had dealt with difficult situations before. Yet there was something uniquely heartbreaking about this young girl, her fear, her grief, and the responsibility that had been thrust upon her. Olivia, still standing nearby, fought back tears as she gently placed her hand on Lily's shoulder. The nurse had seen her share of tragic stories in the emergency room, but this felt different. This was raw, heartbreaking, and utterly overwhelming. She couldn't shake the image of this girl walking in with a baby cradled in her arms, alone in the world. Dr. Stevens sat across from Lily, pulling up a stool. He leaned forward slightly, trying to meet her tear-filled eyes. Lily, he began, his voice soft and patient. You've been through something no one your age should ever have to face, but you're here now, and we want to help you. We need to understand what happened so we can make sure you and the baby are safe. Lily took a shaky breath, her fingers gripping the sleeves of her hoodie like it was the only thing holding her together. She looked up at the doctor, her eyes wide and glistening with tears. Her name was Sarah, Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. Your sister? Dr. Stevens asked gently, nodding for her to continue. Lily nodded, staring down at her lap. Yeah, my big sister. She raised me, you know, after our mom left. She was all I had. It was just the two of us. Her voice cracked slightly, and she paused, struggling to find the strength to speak. Dr. Stevens remained silent, allowing her the space to share her story in her own time. The quiet hum of the hospital equipment filled the room, but it was as if time had stopped for the three of them. She was so scared when she found out she was pregnant, Lily continued, her voice trembling. She didn't tell anyone. We didn't have anyone to tell, really. Just us in that little apartment. I tried to help her as much as I could, but I didn't know what to do. The memory seemed to overwhelm her for a moment, and tears spilled down her cheeks. She thought she could handle it on her own, Lily added. She said everything would be fine, that we didn't need anyone else. She tried so hard. Olivia quietly knelt beside her, gently handing her a tissue. Lily wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. It all happened so fast, Lily whispered, her voice filled with pain. Sarah went into labor late at night, and I was the only one there. She told me not to call anyone, so I didn't. I thought we could do it, that we'd be okay. But then, something went wrong. The room seemed to shrink as Lily's words hung in the air. Olivia's hand tightened around Lily's shoulder, offering silent comfort. Lily's voice cracked again as she continued. Sarah was in so much pain. She was scared, and I didn't know what to do. I tried to help her, I really did. But the baby came, and she just wouldn't stop bleeding. She told me to take care of him, her son, my nephew, and then she stopped moving. Lily's small frame trembled as sobs overtook her. Olivia stood up, wrapping her arms around the young girl in a protective embrace, while Dr. Stevens fought back his own emotions. He had seen death before. He had seen the aftermath of tragedy. But this was something deeper. This was a child, left to deal with the unimaginable. The doctor leaned back slightly, rubbing his eyes before speaking again. Lily, you did everything you could. What happened to your sister is not your fault. You were brave, and you were there for her and the baby when no one else was. Lily sniffed, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe if I could have done more, maybe she'd still be here. The weight of her grief was palpable, and for a moment no one in the room spoke. The silence was thick, as if the walls themselves were absorbing the sorrow and helplessness that filled the space. Where is your family? Dr. Stevens asked gently. Do you have anyone else? An aunt? Grandparents? Anyone who can help you? Lily shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. It's just me now. Those words, spoken with such finality, shattered whatever calm Dr. Stevens had tried to maintain. His heart ached for this young girl who had lost everything, who was left to fend for herself and an infant in a world that seemed so cruel. But before he could say anything, Lily looked up, her expression one of sheer determination through the tears. I promised her, doctor, she said, her voice firmer now. I promised Sarah I'd take care of him. I have to keep that promise. Dr. Stevens leaned forward, resting a hand on Lily's knee. And you will, Lily, but you don't have to do it alone. We're going to help you. We'll figure this out together. At that moment, Olivia stepped back and nodded at the doctor. She could see that despite everything, Lily had a strength far beyond her years, a resilience that came from having endured too much, too soon. Let's take it one step at a time, Dr. Stevens said. First, we're going to make sure both you and the baby are healthy and safe. Then we'll find a way to help you through this, okay? Lily nodded, though her eyes remained clouded with worry. She had lived through the worst of it, and the road ahead seemed long and uncertain. But in that moment, she knew she wasn't entirely alone. As Dr. Stevens and Olivia continued to talk with her, the shadows that had haunted her since that fateful night seemed to lift, if only a little. But deep down, the weight of her sister's final words, "Take care of him," would stay with her for the rest of her life. The responsibility, the grief, and the love that bound her to that baby boy were now all she had left. And somehow, she would have to find a way to carry on. Lily sat in the sterile, quiet hospital room, her small frame dwarfed by the oversized chair. Her fingers nervously fidgeted with the edges of her hoodie, her eyes red from crying, her face drained of emotion. She had just revealed the hardest truth of her young life. Her sister Sarah was gone, leaving her to care for a baby she didn't know how to raise. And now there were even more questions. Questions she wasn't sure she had answers to. Dr. Stevens shifted slightly in his chair, his professional demeanor softening as he prepared to ask the next inevitable question. His voice, though gentle, carried the weight of necessity. Lily, he began carefully, do you know who the baby's father is? Is there someone we can contact who might help? The question hung in the air, filling the room with a tense silence. Lily's head dropped slightly, her messy hair falling over her face as she swallowed back a sob. Her hands twisted together, knuckles white from the pressure, and for a moment it seemed like she wouldn't answer at all. I don't know, she whispered, her voice so soft it was almost lost in the hum of the hospital equipment. Sarah never told me who the father was. She wouldn't talk about it. She always seemed scared, like something bad would happen if anyone found out. She'd cry at night sometimes, and she was so protective of the baby, like she was afraid someone would come and take her away. Dr. Stevens and Nurse Olivia exchanged a worried glance. The situation had just taken an even more complicated turn. The baby, now lying peacefully in the nursery, wasn't just an orphan. She might also be in danger. Whoever the father was, Sarah had clearly felt threatened by him. Do you have any idea at all who it might be, Lily? Olivia asked softly, kneeling beside the girl. Her hand rested gently on Lily's knee, trying to offer some sense of comfort in the midst of the overwhelming confusion. "Anyone she mentioned, even just once?" Lily shook her head. "She was always so secretive," she replied, her voice barely holding steady. "I begged her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She said it would be better if no one knew. I think she was trying to protect me. She didn't want me involved." Tears started streaming down Lily's face again, and Olivia instinctively pulled her into a warm embrace. The girl melted into the nurse's arms, her small body trembling with the release of all the fear and sadness she had been holding in for so long. "I don't know what to do," Lily cried, her voice muffled against Olivia's uniform. "I promised Sarah I'd take care of the baby, but I'm only 13. I can't do this alone. I don't even know how to start." Olivia gently rubbed Lily's back, holding her as she sobbed. "You're not alone, sweetheart," she whispered soothingly. "You're so brave for coming here. We're going to help you. We'll make sure you and the baby are safe." Lily's sobs quieted, though she didn't let go of Olivia. She felt so small, so lost, as though the world had swallowed her whole and left her with no way out. The baby's cries echoed in her memory, a constant reminder of the responsibility now resting on her young shoulders. She loved her sister's child, but the weight of caring for her, of keeping the promise she had made to Sarah, felt like a mountain she wasn't strong enough to climb. "I just wish Sarah was here," Lily whispered into the silence. "She always knew what to do, even when things got bad. She made me feel like everything would be okay." Olivia's heart broke a little more at the sound of the girl's words. She could only imagine the burden Lily was carrying. "I know it feels impossible right now," Olivia said, gently pulling back so she could look Lily in the eyes. "But you've done something incredible already. You brought that baby here. You saved her life, Lily, and that's the bravest thing anyone could have done." Lily sniffed, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "But what happens now?" she asked, her voice small and fragile. "What if they take the baby away from me?" Dr. Stevens, who had been silent up until this point, leaned forward, his kind eyes focused on Lily. "We're going to make sure you both get the support you need," he said with quiet conviction. "No one is going to take the baby away from you without doing everything possible to help. We'll involve social services, and they'll work with you. But for now, you've done exactly what you needed to do. Get her to safety. That's the most important thing." Lily nodded, but her uncertainty still hung in the air like a dark cloud. She wasn't sure how anything would turn out. Everything had changed in a matter of days, and the future felt like a gaping void. Olivia stood, keeping her hand on Lily's shoulder. "I'll stay with you tonight, okay? You won't have to go through this alone. We'll figure it out together." For the first time since walking through the hospital doors, Lily managed a small, grateful smile. Though the pain of losing her sister was still fresh, and the fear of the unknown loomed large, the kindness of the people around her made the burden a little lighter. For the first time since Sarah had passed, she didn't feel quite so alone. As the night deepened and the hospital's busy halls quieted down, Lily leaned back in the chair, her heart heavy, but a tiny spark of hope flickering inside her. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, she held on to the small sliver of peace she had found in the warmth of Olivia's embrace. And as she closed her eyes, her thoughts drifted back to Sarah, wishing her sister was there to guide her, to tell her everything would be all right. But she knew one thing for certain. She would keep her promise to Sarah no matter how hard it got. She would take care of the baby, just like she'd sworn she would. The night passed slowly, the hospital lights dimming as a new chapter of Lily's life began to unfold, one filled with both heartache and an uncertain future. But she wasn't entirely alone anymore, and that made all the difference. The silence that followed Lily's words was profound, heavy with grief and compassion. Hope lay peacefully in Lily's arms, her tiny hand curling unconsciously against Lily's chest, as if sensing the warmth and security only a sister's love could offer. For a moment, time seemed to stop, the quiet hum of hospital machinery, the only sound breaking the stillness in the room. Nurse Olivia, who had been with Lily from the beginning, couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She turned away, wiping her eyes quickly, but her heart was breaking for this brave young girl who had lost so much yet carried such a heavy responsibility. Dr. Stevens, usually composed, felt a lump rise in his throat. He had dealt with trauma and loss countless times in his career, but something about this moment felt different, more personal. It wasn't just about the death of a young mother or the tragedy of a baby left without its parent. It was the sheer weight of Lily's quiet bravery, her determination to keep her sister's promise, her strength in the face of unimaginable heartache. "She's beautiful," Olivia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion as she looked at the baby nestled in Lily's arms. "Your sister must have been so proud of you, Lily, and I'm sure she loved Hope more than anything." Lily nodded, though her face was full of sorrow. "She was scared all the time," she murmured. "She didn't want anyone to know about the baby's father. She said it was dangerous. But she loved Hope. She said it didn't matter how hard things got, she'd do whatever it took to keep her safe." The nurses, who had gathered just outside the room, listened intently, their hearts aching for the young girl who had been thrust into a situation far beyond her years. Some of them silently exchanged glances, remembering their own children, thinking of the weight that Lily now had to carry. Dr. Stevens stepped closer, kneeling beside Lily. "You've done so much already, Lily," he said gently. "And I promise you, we'll make sure you're not alone in this. Hope is going to have the best care. We'll help you figure out what comes next." Lily's eyes widened slightly, fear creeping into her expression. I don't know what to do. I don't want anyone to take her away. She's all I have left." The room fell into silence again. Olivia placed her hand on Lily's shoulder, her voice soft but full of conviction. "No one is going to take her from you, sweetheart. We're going to make sure you have everything you need to care for her. You've done an incredible job already. We're here to help you." For the first time that night, Lily allowed herself to cry fully. Her tears fell in heavy drops onto Hope's soft blanket, her body trembling with the release of so many emotions she had been holding inside. It was as if all the pain, the fear, and the weight of the past weeks came pouring out of her, and she clung to Hope with everything she had left. The people in the room, nurses, doctors, even the receptionist who had seen her walk in, could only stand in quiet awe of the strength this small girl displayed. It wasn't the kind of strength that came from bravado or confidence, but from the quiet, unbreakable determination of a heart that loved deeply. "I made a promise," Lily choked out between sobs. "I promised Sarah I'd take care of her. I can't break that promise. I can't." Dr. Stevens, his own eyes red from holding back tears, nodded. "And you haven't. You've kept your promise, Lily. You've done everything right. And now you've got all of us to help you keep that promise. You're not alone in this." The tears in the room were no longer just for the tragedy. They were for the beauty of Lily's heart, the love she had for her sister, and the promise of Hope. Hope, the baby who was the embodiment of her sister's last wish for a better life. Lily looked down at Hope, her tears slowing as she watched the baby sleep. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and whispered, "I'm going to take care of you, Hope. I don't care how hard it gets. We're going to get through this, just like Sarah wanted." As the staff slowly left the room, giving Lily and Hope a moment of peace, the story of the night began to spread through the hospital like wildfire. Word reached doctors in different departments, nurses on other floors, and even some of the patients in the waiting room. People began quietly offering donations, small gifts of diapers, formula, clothes, anything they could find to help Lily in her new role as a caregiver. By the time the sun began to rise, the staff had gathered a bundle of supplies for Lily and Hope. The hospital, usually a place of sterile efficiency, had become a sanctuary of compassion, where every person who heard Lily's story felt moved to help in whatever way they could. The tears in that room, tears of sadness, tears of love, and tears of quiet strength, had transformed the hospital that night. It wasn't just a place for healing bodies, it had become a place for healing hearts. And as Lily sat in that small room, watching over her niece with a fierce determination in her eyes, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. She wasn't sure what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for sure: she would keep her promise, no matter what. In that hospital, where the night had begun in sorrow, a new story had begun to unfold, a story of love, resilience, and the enduring power of family. Lily and Hope had each other, and with the support of those around them, they would face whatever came next, together. In the days that followed, St. Mary's Hospital transformed from a place of sorrow into a beacon of hope for Lily and her newborn niece, Hope. The medical staff, deeply affected by the story of the young girl and her tragic loss, collaborated to create a support system that would help them through this difficult time. As Lily adjusted to her new role as Hope's guardian, the community rallied around her. Social workers arrived, ensuring that Lily received counseling and guidance. They organized meetings with local charities that specialized in supporting young guardians and their dependents. Word spread quickly through the small town, and soon neighbors, friends, and even strangers offered assistance. A family friend, Mrs. Johnson, who had known Sarah from church, stepped forward to provide a safe haven for Lily and Hope. She had always admired Sarah's unwavering spirit and wanted to honor her memory. "You can stay with me as long as you need, Lily," she said softly, her voice full of compassion. "We'll figure this out together." The day Lily and Hope moved into Mrs. Johnson's home was bittersweet. The old house had a cozy charm, with its warm wooden floors and a kitchen that smelled of fresh bread. Yet as Lily walked through the door, she felt the weight of her sister's absence. The walls seemed to echo with memories of laughter and love. With a trembling hand, she placed Hope's tiny crib in the corner of her new room, a gesture that filled her heart with both pain and purpose. As days turned into weeks, Lily discovered the strength that had always been within her. Every coo and giggle from Hope was a reminder of the love Sarah had poured into her daughter. Lily often found herself gazing at Hope as she slept, her tiny fingers curling and uncurling, a miracle nestled in a blanket. It was these moments that fueled Lily's determination to be the best guardian she could be. Yet there were moments when the grief would wash over her, heavy and relentless. She would sit by the window, clutching a worn photo of Sarah, tears streaming down her cheeks as memories flooded back. The two sisters had been inseparable, sharing dreams, laughter, and secrets. In those quiet moments, Lily would whisper to the photo, "I promise I'll take care of her, Sarah. I won't let you down." As the seasons changed, so did Lily's life. With the support of Mrs. Johnson and the community, she enrolled in online classes to continue her education. Each night, after putting Hope to bed, she would sit at the kitchen table, textbooks spread out before her, studying late into the night. It was a difficult balance, but the thought of building a better future for herself and Hope kept her focused. Lily also discovered a network of support from other young mothers who had faced similar struggles. They formed a small group that met weekly, offering advice, sharing stories, and lifting each other up. In those meetings, Lily found solace and understanding, connecting with women who had turned their pain into strength. They would often share laughter, a rare gift that felt like a balm on her heart. One afternoon, as Lily sat in a park with Hope, the sun shining brightly overhead, she watched other mothers play with their children. A warmth filled her chest as she realized that she was no longer just a grieving girl. She was a guardian, a protector, and a source of love. "We're going to be okay, Hope," she murmured, looking down at the baby who cooed in response as if understanding her words. Sarah's absence was a constant reminder of the fragility of life, yet she had left behind a legacy of hope. On the one-year anniversary of Sarah's passing, Lily organized a small gathering with friends and family. They planted a tree in the backyard of Mrs. Johnson's home, a beautiful oak that would grow strong and tall, symbolizing new beginnings and the enduring bond between sisters. As they gathered around the freshly planted tree, each person took turns sharing their favorite memory of Sarah. Laughter mixed with tears as they recounted stories of her kindness, strength, and unyielding spirit. At that moment, Lily felt Sarah's presence surround her, wrapping her in love. In the years that followed, Lily flourished in her new role. Hope thrived, growing into a vibrant toddler with a smile that could light up a room. The bond between the two was unbreakable. They were each other's lifeline, navigating life's challenges together. Every milestone Hope achieved, her first steps, her first words, was a reminder of the beauty that life could still offer. With each passing day, Lily became more confident in her abilities as a guardian. She worked part-time at a local cafe, her earnings supporting their small household. The cafe became a second home where she developed friendships with coworkers and customers, all of whom admired her resilience. They often offered words of encouragement, applauding her for being such a devoted aunt. Lily never forgot the darkness that had enveloped her life after Sarah's death, but she learned to carry it with her rather than be consumed by it. The pain was a part of her story, but so was the love she had for Hope and the community that had embraced them. One day, while cleaning up in the cafe, she overheard a customer talking about a local charity that provided scholarships for young guardians. Her heart raced with hope. It was an opportunity to pursue her dream of becoming a social worker, a field where she could make a difference in the lives of others facing similar struggles. That night, she sat down with a pen and paper, crafting her application with determination. As she submitted her application, Lily felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She was not just surviving, she was thriving. Hope, with her infectious laughter and bright spirit, was the light that guided Lily through the darkest moments. They had become a testament to the power of love, resilience, and new beginnings. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the story and share any themes or ideas you'd like to hear in future stories. Your feedback means the world to me. Thanks for watching.